Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. So, guys, we have President Trump saying a U.S. Navy ship shot down an Iranian drone. The U.S. took defensive action, quote unquote, against a drone that had closed to a very, very near distance and ignored multiple calls to stand down. So says President Trump today. As we're looking at the assault ship, the USS Boxer, which has entered the Persian Gulf after going through the Straits of Hormuz. And so, as we see right here, this is the latest in a series of tense incidents between the U.S. and Tehran. Trump told reporters at the White House Thursday USS Boxer, a U.S. Navy amphibious assault ship, took defensive action against an Iranian drone that had closed into a very, very near distance, approximately 1,000 yards, and ignored multiple calls to stand down. The drone was threatening the safety of the ship and the ship's crew and was immediately destroyed. It's the latest of many provocative and hostile actions against vessels operating in international waters, the president said, adding that the U.S. reserves the right to defend our personnel, our facilities, our interests, and calls upon all nations to condemn Iran's actions. So, this is just another escalation. We know this whole thing has been going on for quite a while. It's been building, and, this is one more provocative action that we see. And so the downing of this drone was just the latest incident to be reported near the Straits of Hormuz, which, as you know, it's a bottleneck. It's a very strategic waterway off of Iran's coast, which separates the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. A third of the world's seaborne oil shipments, 20% of oil traded worldwide, pass out of the Persian Gulf through this strait. Iran's Revolutionary Guard seized a foreign oil tanker after accusing 12 crew members of smuggling oil. Earlier this month, several Iranian boats attempted to stop a British commercial vessel sailing through the strait, but the Iranian vessels were driven away by a British military ship, a senior U.S. defense official and British government spokesman had said. So as we see here, AP or Iran State TV, Iranian forces seize foreign oil tanker and its crew. And so they released that message on Thursday again for smuggling fuel out of the country. And hours later, they released a video, as we will see, of the seized tanker that smuggled fuel in the Persian Gulf. So the escalations are continuing. Iran offers nuclear deal if the U.S. lifts sanctions. Meanwhile, oil tumbles. So who knew Rand Paul could be such an effective negotiator? One day after the Republican senator and son of Ron Paul was reported to be Trump's liaison to negotiate with Iran in hopes of easing tensions, sending the price of oil tumbling, The Guardian reported that Iran has offered a deal with the U.S. in which it would formally and permanently accept enhanced inspections of its nuclear program in return for the permanent lifting of U.S. sanctions. This offer was made by Iran's foreign minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif, on a visit to New York, although for those hoping that the U.S. and Iran will become BFFs, don't get your hopes up. As The Guardian notes, the offer is unlikely to be warmly received by the Trump administration, which is currently demanding Iran make a range of sweeping concessions, including cessation of uranium enhancement and support for the proxies and the allies in the region. To this, Zarif countered his offer was a substantial move. So, yeah, we're watching this situation. We know there's forces that always seem to want war. And yes, for some industries, war is extremely profitable. The U.S. deploys 500 troops plus Patriots at Saudi air base facing the Iraq border. And without a doubt, we've been watching a buildup going on. And it's interesting that there was the announcement of basically all the troops out of Syria and, saying one thing and doing is totally different. Just as, when you put a Republican in office, that used to be the conservative party, the party of, good fiscal, basically good fiscal policies, at least from the point of view of not wanting to spend money and, of course, not raising taxes. Well, the tax thing, is one thing. And when it comes to spending, this administration spent more than any other. Now, the Obama administration spent more than any of the previous ones. It just keeps going up, up, up. So, neither of these parties are really quote unquote conservative financially when we're talking about that fiscally. It's just nothing but just a slogan. It's not the reality. And really, we can't believe anything that's said, because anything that's said is usually it's just about salesmanship, trying to sell a point of view, trying to sell the situation, and it's putting lipstick on a pig is what it is. That's really what it is. And so here we see, bracing for the revival of Iran's attacks on Gulf oil allies, the Trump administration has begun deploying troop reinforcements to Saudi Arabia. The first 500 troops of the 1,000 announced by the Pentagon arrived this week at the Prince Sultan Air Base of the East Capital. U.S. media reported on Thursday, July 18th, along with several Patriot anti-air missile batteries. They landed the day after the pro-Iranian Yemeni Houthi insurgents claimed another drone attack on the southern Saudi Jazan regional airport. Intelligence reaching Washington reveals that pro-Iranian Iraq Shiite militias are about to expand their participation in Tehran's reprisals for U.S. sanctions by mounting explosive drone attacks on Saudi Arabia, or even missiles from across the Iraqi border. In London, the Royal Navy announced dispatch of a third warship to the Gulf region as escorts for tankers. The HMS Kent guided missile frigate will follow the H&K Duncan, which is on its way there as well. So DEPCA's military intelligence sources reporting the positioning of the new U.S. troop reinforcements opposite the Saudi border with Iraq in preparation for Tehran to make Iraq its main launching pad for the coming spate of proxy attacks on American targets and U.S. allies in the region. Secretary of State Pompeo was recently reported to be considering shuttering the U.S. embassy in Baghdad and evacuating American diplomats from the country. Other sources add that the next targets of Iran's anti-American ire may include Israel, and those attacks may also come from Iraq. And so when we look here, this is out of the Wall Street Journal, basically talking about the same thing. And then out of RT, the Pentagon's new nuclear doctrine is scary as hell. The Pentagon is actively contemplating the use of nuclear weapons to win wars that need not be fought in the first place. As expected, opposition to the U.S. nuclear doctrine is almost non-existent in the mainstream media. You don't really hear anything of it. It used to be the case. The idea of using nuclear weapons in a real-world conflict was such a taboo idea that no one was ever openly to contemplate it. We only need to look back at the end of World War II to realize how catastrophic and harmful nuclear weapons can be on civilian populations, yet we shouldn't have the blueprint of Nagasaki and Hiroshima to know the use of nuclear weapons would be a frightening and criminal act. They are deadly and unnecessary. End of story. You can all save me the cliched response, but they ended a war. Firstly, the use of nuclear weapons didn't end a war, it started one, the Cold War. Secondly, anyone who knows even a little bit of history knows Japan was on the verge of defeat. But don't take this author's word for it, because the author wasn't there. But those who were typically made statements to the effect that the use of the atomic bombs at Hiroshima and Nagasaki was of no material assistance in our war against Japan. Japan was already defeated and ready to surrender, but the author digresses. The U.S. military has decided that the only chance it has of maintaining a stranglehold over its empire is to actively contemplate the scenario and situations in which it should deploy the use of nuclear weapons. And so, that's just scary stuff. And how is it ever right to just simply kill innocent civilians? Because people were simply born in a country. they're just there, and it's like most people are not directly involved in any of these wars. And yet it's just the innocent civilians that are always getting killed, and as if their lives are completely meaningless by these war hawks, the gods of war. U.S. slapped sanctions on 5 Iranian nationals, 7 entities dealing with Tehran. And U.S.-Iranian tensions have drastically deteriorated since the U.S. unilaterally withdrew from the nuclear deal. And, it's just a situation that at times it feels like it's spiraling out of control. U.S. is increasing the number of mercenaries in Syria. And so the use of mercenaries, use of contractors, changes things, where governments could say that they're not really having any direct, any situations where their armies are directly confronting other armies, yet they are using contractors, mercenaries. And this is something that's ongoing, and it kind of twists the truth. And of course, contractors tend to get paid a lot better than the soldiers do. So the U.S. has been increasing the number of private military contractors deployed in the northeastern region of Syria. It's reported that the number of private military contractors in Syria exceeds 4,000, and as many as 540 people arrived in the country in the second half of June alone, including 70 command personnel and instructors. The mercenaries are transported by car in groups of 12 to 16 people as well. And these private military contractors are reportedly training U.S.-backed forces, protecting oil and gas infrastructure, and ensuring security. The U.S. Central Command is responsible for their deployment and activities. And, make no mistake about it, that's blood money without a doubt. And, I just have a problem with that. Personally, I just have a problem with that whole idea. But, some people will do anything for money. They really will, and that's very sad. Russia denies speculations that it deployed ground forces for Idlib campaign, so it only feels like it's a matter of time before there's direct confrontation between the two sides, speaking of Russia, China, Iran, and the U.S. and its allies. But Russia and the U.S. engaging directly. So you could see that things are clearly building up. Russian military ship enters the Mediterranean. The Uglich corvette carrying artillery and caliber long-range missiles entered the Mediterranean on Wednesday, Russian military sources said. The vessel is part of the Russian Caspian Sea fleet, sailed through the canals into the Black Sea to join the Russian fleet docked in Syria. And over here, Turkey removed from the F-35 program over the Russian S-400 purchase, which, obviously we had talked about Turkey before, and, they are a part of NATO, yet they're obviously allied with Russia and Iran, and yet they also do have their own agenda going on at the same time. Pentagon fears Turkey to retaliate against U.S. troops in Syria over new sanctions. So as expected, Turkey blasted the White House's prior day announcement that it killed Turkey's involvement in the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program after Ankara received its first batch of S-400 Russian-made air defense components starting last week. So the unilateral step, according to Iran, is a mistake, and it's incompatible with the spirit of alliance and does not rely on any legitimate justification. I'm sorry, Turkey is what I meant there. So, this is another relationship going sour. And again, Turkey has been very active and very aggressive over in that area, going into Iraq at times, also in Syria. A major threat to dollar's reserve status, Russia offers to join European SWIFT bypass. We all know about BRICS, and we do know that there's some European components that are also sidestepping the U.S.'s sanctions and dealing with Iran directly. So what we've really seen is a lot more isolation of the U.S. in these times than we've seen in the past, kind of going it alone in so many ways. And over here, this is something that I hope everybody is thinking about. And this is your survival seed bank, and this is out of Urban Survival Site. So how to build a survival seed bank so you can grow food after the collapse. We got so much going on right now with all the earth changes, and then of course you throw in these winds of war that seem to have flames that are about to just break out everywhere, and then it just calms down a little bit, then it gets up again, then it calms down. Regardless of the situation in this world, you need to be able to grow your own food, or at least something, because we've talked about the grid collapsing. It's only a matter of time. Now we have so many food shortages starting to materialize that will materialize and become more global as time goes on, unless there's something really done by these governments to actually address the problem, acknowledge that, and put aside their differences and actually work together for the common good of the people, which would be something that we would expect them to do, but never seems to manifest somehow. So obviously, food, water, and shelter are 3 essential requirements for survival after some sort of apocalyptic disaster. Of the 3, though, food may be the most difficult to acquire, and that depends on where you're at, obviously. If you're out in the middle of the desert, and or even if you have your own well, and the power goes out, do you have a hand pump on your well? Are you going to be able to get water out of that well? That's something else to realize as well. And then when the food, you could stockpile food, but at some point, you're going to probably need to learn how to grow your own. And so there's a lot of things that can be done. And one of the things that you want to do is start a seed bank. And you want heirloom seeds that are open pollinated, non-hybrid, non-GMO. Most definitely. And we know all about the GMOs and the hybridization that goes on. Yeah, you want the heirloom stuff. That is what you want. And then once you have them, just keep collecting seeds from the plants you use. So, learn to save seeds. Save them from your first harvest and store them properly. So very, very important. Make sure, again, non-GMO. You don't want any GMOs. So you could put your own together. Amazon actually has pre-made seed banks. Here's one right here. Survival Garden, 15,000 non-GMO heirloom vegetable seeds, survival, 32 variety pack, only $15.95, on Prime. And of course, Amazon's a big, huge, some would say evil corporate giant, but it's just, for a lot of people, it's the easiest way of doing things. But once you get them, just remember to save your seeds. And there's a lot more that we could talk about, and we have in other videos, and we will again. So, my friends, as always, like, share, subscribe. Thank you for your support on Patreon and Ko-Fi. It means so much in these times. I look forward to your comments. Stay safe, stay prepared, keep your eyes open. God bless. Namaste.